I am that other Laura Ingram. I've got some awesome news, personally, for people that have been following the channel for a long time. I just finished writing my book a couple months ago. I've been working on doing final edits, and I'm going to be looking to see if there's any potential publishers that would want to publish it. But I have a goal of publishing it myself, if not on Amazon in November. So I'm really excited about it. The thing that makes this such a big deal is that I've been working on this book for about 10 years now. And it took me a very long time to go through because of all the trauma that I had to go through in order to write it, or to relive in order to write it. Having grown up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in a cult, it was a lot to go through. And then also, of course, being transgender. My goal in writing it, it's written in the form of a narrative. It's not an autobiography, really. In a way it is, but it's more of a fictionalized, narrative-driven autobiography. But at the same time, it is the narrative portion of it and the drive behind it is different from, say, your normal, arc. I made mention to Chuck Palahniuk's Invisible Monsters. I love that book, and so a little bit of this book is an homage to that and how that was written. It's written in that same kind of back and forth through time type of narrative storytelling that I love so much in that book, and there's plenty of other books that do it as well, but that's the one that meant a lot to me, and throughout the course of the book you'll understand why. And the reason why I'm so excited that I've gotten it finished, I've been sitting, I've been pretty much sitting on my butt the past 2 or 3 years trying to finish this thing, because I started it, like I said, like a decade ago. And I started writing it, pretty much right after leaving the cult and starting to transition. I wanted everything to be fresh as I started going through it and started writing it. So, all of that stuff, a lot of it was written so long ago. And given the fact that it is about growing up transgender as a fundamentalist Christian, that is, fundamentalist Christianity and transgender, those two things are big topics right now, unfortunately. And I do think that it's really important that I get this out as soon as possible. At least that was my thoughts, was that I really wanted to get it out as soon as possible, because I feel like it has the potential to help out a lot of people and bring a new perspective and a new conversation to what's going on. I never thought when I finished it would be so, such a parallel to what's going on in the world. But I really do think that it is at this point, which is why I've been really, and it's been over the past couple years, like I could see where things were going, and I could see, the direction that a lot of things were going in the trans community and in politics and in so many things. So I really wanted to make sure that I finished this and got it out so that it could help. It could help in that conversation. And, maybe maybe it'll get published, and you know, only subscribers on here will read it. Maybe nobody will read it. You know, but it was also for me a very important thing for me to get through, as far as, you know, working through some of the things that maybe I hadn't really thought about very much, or hadn't had the chance. I mean, going from the Jehovah's Witnesses, being a parent and transitioning and dealing with all of that, it's a lot to go through. And by the time I was done with it, I felt very good. Like, I just felt good in my soul. A lot of weight off. And the story touches on some very difficult themes. Abuse, growing up in a cult, sexual abuse, sex work, things like that. And then, of course, just growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you know anything about that, that's definitely a big theme. And of course, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I was a ministerial servant. So, you know, that's a big question that I get a lot of the time from people is, you know, how was that, you know, and being a ministerial servant and being trans, and kind of the difference there. And of course, seeing how sisters were treated in the congregation, and, you know, how my mom and my sister acted in the congregation, who were generally like better educated women than most other sisters in the congregation, and the different levels of abuse and then manipulation that, you know, both, you know, is enacted upon sisters in the congregation and is created by some of the more well-off sisters in the congregation, like my mother. I've been reading this on audiobook, but it was so good that I really wanted to read. If you recognize this book, I really wanted to read it in print, so I just picked up this copy. It's very similar, I think, as far as tone, to this book, and that was complete when this book came out. And I was hearing the things that were said about it, like, it was completely unexpected, because it was kind of where I was going with my book. So it'll be interesting to see, just to hear the reviews and things, and read it so far, and see how there's some similarities as far as the tone and the direction of the book. So why am I dressed like this? I mean, it's not very different from how I've been dressed in the past, I suppose. It's a little bit different. I don't think I'm this exposed, I think, normally. And to be honest, like, it's a little bit, like, if people from work see this, I might be a little bit embarrassed. But honestly, the real reason for it is because I was told that in order to gain views, the views that I want on my channel, I should show more cleavage. The makeup, the cleavage. I mean, this is literally not, like, I don't usually wear makeup day to day. And in fact, like, I had falsies, like the falsie eyelashes, to put on, but the glue didn't work. I need to get some more glue. So, not even as extravagant as I was planning. And of course, like, I had nails, you know, a couple weeks ago, and I was planning on filming this a couple weeks ago, so I'd be all to the nines, you know. But things happen, you know, kids, work, boyfriend, different things. So, I mean, it's decent, right? Like, pretty happy. Gosh, like, to tell you the truth, like, I mean, I've been working on this book, sitting on my butt, like I said, for the past, like, 2 years, pretty much since the pandemic was beginning to end. Not the end of it, but towards the end of it. Is when I really started going forward, working on this book as much as possible. And then, of course, I was also dealing with a custody battle, a custody situation. Shouldn't call it a battle, I guess, but I mean, it was. And I will go slightly into that in the book. It was awful, to be honest, but I have full custody of my kids now. What I speak about in the book regarding all of that is how I'm going to go about relaying it, because it's honestly not something that I really want to talk about. And again, like, I don't usually look like this. Like, I've always been a little bit more introverted, and being on video has always been kind of hard for me. And definitely the makeup helps. It gives me some courage. Like I was saying, I was sitting on my butt for so long, and I gained a lot of weight, and I've been working since finishing the book over the past couple months, in addition to doing the edits, which it takes a lot less time than doing the actual writing and running through all the traumatic pieces and trying to fit it all together into some sort of narrative. Like, over the past couple months, I've really worked hard and have lost quite a bit of weight. I do not weigh myself, so I can't say, like, I was this much and I dropped this much, because to me, I think that's past a certain, like, I want to say past a certain age, because, like, I used to be pretty, heavy into, like, I think I probably had, like, an eating disorder for a while. But I used to, like, really watch calories and really, watch my pounds. And this time I'm just like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm happy with who I am, and, I've got a good job, and I've got my kids, and things are going really well. And, like, I just am not going to do that. I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm just going to exercise until I feel well. And so here I am. Like, that's another reason why I am just more... I'm a little bit more exposed than I normally am. And that's just because... even though I'm definitely still a little bit heavier than I was when I first, when the last time I made a video, I feel like going through that writing the book, and then going through, going through, feeling awful about yourself because of all the weight that you gained, and trying to put this book out that's like your insides, like your guts spilled out on the paper, and trying to put that out, and having gained so much weight just trying to do that, and then working it off, and like that mixture of feeling that good about completing something that that long in the making, and that pivotal, and then also like taking the weight off. Like, it feels really good. And so, like, I'm just finding myself, I'm not scared of anything. Like, I realize I'm not the most fit trans person on the internet, and I'm not, like, the most interesting, probably, because there's quite a few trans people out there now, and so much more interesting than me, probably. But I feel good, and you know, that's the thing, is like, while I feel good, I should do this, and not only come back on here and read my book, but come back on and, you know, start doing videos again, and wear what I want, and talk about the struggles that I've been going through, a little bit, talk about my life, and stand up for some of the things that are going on, because not, you know, despite there being more trans channels than ever, probably, I mean, I know from watching them and from talking to other trans people here and there, people aren't confident, or aren't as confident. Some are, but, like, it's courage, like, is hard to find nowadays, and in the trans community, because there's so much writing on it, and there's so much happening. These laws that are going out in these different states. In Florida, Ron DeSantis, J.K. Rowling. I think last time I was doing the podcast, I did an episode on her, but still going strong, apparently. And yeah, like, while I'm feeling good and you know, I feel better than I ever have, really. Have more confidence than I ever have. I mean, I look at my old pictures. I used to get people that would stop me on the street and be like, they'd stop me on the streets and be like, you look like a model. You should model. You're so beautiful. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Like, I literally would have people stop me on the streets saying that. And, you know, I used to laugh at it. I'm always self-deprecating. So, you know, even now, it's hard for me to gauge how I look. But I look at those old pictures. I'm like, wow, like, I wasted so much, like, being afraid. Internalizing everything, and a lot of it was because of the cult. A lot of it was how I was raised, things that you know, I had to overcome. And so to be here in this spot where I've finished that, and I feel like I've put that behind me, and like, it's not dragging on my soul anymore. Kind of unwound all of those things that happened back then. And then now also, you know, I'm seeing myself working and putting off the weight and you know, living my life, and, you know, taking this perspective, and I feel good, and I feel like I can take on the world, and so I'm taking on as much as I can, as far as, you know, the stuff going on, you know, with other in the world right now for trans people, for trans kids. And yeah. Anyways, I suppose I'm ready now to read my book. I guess I've done a quick synopsis of everything that I've been dealing with. And now I should probably start reading the book. And I suppose this will be a long podcast, or maybe I'll divide it up into 2 separate parts. But let me think. Last time we left off, I think we were on chapter 3. Little secret, I added a chapter in between what we've already read. So it's already different from what we've already read. It's already a little bit different. But that's okay. It still flows. And so, but actually in this printed version of the book, this is going to be we were going to go over chapter 4. We were going to go, feel like I'm talking, on the stage. We're going to open our Bibles and go over chapter 5 of Matthew verses. We were going to read chapter 4. I was going to read that. And actually now it's going to be chapter 5, that same chapter. But it still comes right after the last chapter we read, which I think was the trip that I took with James from Renton, from the state of Washington to back to Florida. And, the memories in between. And so now here I am, growing up as one of Jehovah's Transsexuals. Chapter 5. I suddenly found myself on a daunting road trip, traveling in 5 rushed days, 3,900 miles from the coast of the Pacific Northwest to the southeast Atlantic coast of Florida. The car was silent and dark, with no other passengers but the dense, stagnant air lingering in the cabin as the gray but gorgeous luxury of the all-leather interior 2017 Infiniti Q50 quietly purred in its half-hearted attempt to outrun time. I was about 20 miles per hour under the necessary 88, so that's how I knew for sure time travel wasn't responsible for all the deja vu. Oh, odds, please let this be the last time I have to make this insane drive. I plead to probability. I knew 2 things, first of which was that the last homely chapter of existence where I made this trip felt excruciatingly long by the end of it. It was pivotal, eye-opening, and explained so much, sure. But I totally had to admit it felt like forever in the end. Do you know how long forever is? Have you ever tried to just lounge back for a bit and contemplate that? I guess that'd be a discussion better put off for later, but it's not as stable and comforting as you might think. This journey was going to be lengthy. The second thing I knew, there was going to be only one real detour this time. This was going to be the ghastliest, most colorless drive I'd ever had to make. But at least this time, Texas would be much more interesting. I knew without any extra money for a hotel, I'd be a mangy, disgusting mess by the time I got there, but I was still super excited. My fiancé was in Texas. However, until then, this trip was going to be one both back in time and to the future. In between all the fogging windows to the white blur of the cold winter passing by, there would be me and the electrified air and the currents as I sat with my hands at the wheel and stirred my own pot. I would need to queue up plenty of tunes on this smartphone by my side, my rudder, but even then I'd be off adrift in mental somewheres, trying to escape the foreboding. The infinite improbability drive is a wonderful new method of crossing interstellar distances in a few seconds, without all that tedious mucking about in hyperspace. Stephen Fry comes out the car speakers, cheerfully lecturing Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at me. I had nearly finished it several years back, but only nearly. Now seemed like a fantastic time for learning how to avoid all that mucking about. I had felt delighted by the reading, but the voice still occasionally had trouble breaking through the smog dominating this particular hyperspace. I didn't really need cannabis to go back there. The isolation as the sun leisurely sank against Idaho plains stretching to infinity was more than enough. The lines on the road passed on repeat as trivially as sprocket holes of a film strip, but instead were the center stage act in front of me, pulling me into a trance enveloped by wisps of memory. I had spent those 5 days crammed in a car with James 7 years ago. But apart from him, August, and my children, probably the person with whom I'd spent the most time in a car thus far in my life was my sister, Sarah, my dad's daughter who didn't talk to him, as the nurse had put it just a few days before. She was right, though. Sarah wouldn't be there at the hospital. She wouldn't be at my dad's side when I got to the Sunshine State. Yet, for possibly nothing less than forever, will I believe that my sister just didn't get the whole story. She probably is missing decades of the script, a victim of years of the juiciest of jejune, Jehovah's Witness theorizing and gossip. I'll always trust that she was the most innocent of those people I grew up with in my broken, not-so-immediate family. I once knew her caring, trusting heart like I knew my own, and I know it was invaded early by lies and ache, culminating in a seething dispassion, boiling but unresolved for anything having to do with my father, including her own siblings, including sickness and death and near death. I breathed in some of the vehicle's anxious and animated atmosphere and followed the lines into the past. "Yes, you can put on the rainbow beads," a 6-year-old Sarah exclaimed excitedly. We were in her room, and I had taken the beads from her dresser, smiling as I admired the colors. "You can use those. That will be so pretty." She had just helped me into her striped blue dress. Actually, the bodice was a solid royal blue, but from the waist down there were horizontal blue and white stripes as the skirt flowered out in slight and simple folds. It was a little plain, but she was outgrowing it, and we wanted to see if it fit me. At 2 years younger and being much tinier than her at every stage of my early life, it was still kind of big on me, but I still adored it. Now we accessorized, although I don't think either of our tiny brains would have put it like that. We were too young. It was just about fun and trying on the cute little trinkets. There were 2 sets of chunky and bright rainbow beads. I had grabbed the bracelet and then turned to face Sarah. Then I was 4-year-old clumsy pulling it around my wrists and admiring the way the smooth beads rolled against my skin and clicked together as I moved. I loved the way they all lit up my arm like pretty little multicolored cherries waiting to be plucked. Sarah skipped past, and I could hear her grabbing the necklace from off the dresser, which was now at my back. I soon heard clicking beads above me. "Hold your head up, Sammy," Sarah instructed. "These could get caught in your hair, so we have to be careful." My hair was still much shorter than my big sister's, but I knew that sounded dreadful. I kept my chin as straight and my head as high as I could as she slid the necklace on, and the giant colorful beads crowded my vision, slid past my nose, and then settled at my neck. She fidgeted with them a bit, like Mommy always did with the beads. I had seen Mommy help Sarah get ready sometimes, brushing or curling her hair. I was excited for her to see that one of the dresses fit me too, and how nice I looked in it. I knew I wanted to be like my big sister and just like my Mommy when I grew up. She'd be so happy to see us all ready for the meeting together. I turned around and looked back at my sister, smiling and swishing back and forth in staccatoed half twirls. My new dress bloomed and closed with my movement. "You look so cute," Sarah giggled happily. "We're almost ready for the meeting." She skipped back to her closet, her beautiful burgundy dress rustling against its lining as it bellowed behind each step. She slid open the door again, You still need... She grunted a tiny grunt as she reached for a much higher shelf with the help of an uncoiled wire hanger. A hat. A white wicker bonnet with a light blue ribbon had caught the end of the hanger, slid off the shelf, and softly drifted to the floor. Yay! I gasped and ran for it. Pretty! I bent down and quickly put it on my head while Sarah laughed. Don't forget your bag. She pulled her old brown service bag from the closet. That was the one she used to use when she had been my age, for the days that Mommy would take us door to door preaching about Jehovah and his kingdom. Also, Sammy, Sarah giggled again, the ribbon needs to face this way. She reached over and carefully rotated the bonnet around so the bow faced back behind me. There, go look. I shuffled over to the mirror next to Sarah's bureau with a toothy smile that became visible as I peered in. My legs began to excitedly run in place, full of absolute glee. The bright rainbow colors of the beads were vibrant contrast to the soft blues and whites of the dress and bonnet. And in the middle of the ensemble was my pink, cheerful face, bouncing up and down and crinkled around an ecstatic grin. I'm so pretty! I suddenly exploded, with my feelings immediately gushing over. Sarah smiled sweetly back at me. I looked at the tufts of blonde hair peeking out from under the wicker bonnet, deciding to take the hat off for a moment. I wish my hair was longer like yours, I admired, looking at her straight and glossy brown hair. Hers hung down past her shoulders. Sarah giggled and then encouraged, That's why you need to wear the hat? I laughed happily and straightened it back on top of my head with the baby blue ribbon flat along the front and its bow in the back. As I looked again at Sarah, I could see she already had our next activity decided. Let's practice for going out in service, she enthusiastically directed. As we turned for her hot pink bookshelf, which held my book of Bible stories, along with other Watchtower tracts and books, we heard a very gradual creaking sound and saw her bedroom door open. Mommy's voice began as playful and inquisitive. What are you two? But it transformed slightly. What are... Look, Mommy, Sarah started eagerly. She stopped after seeing Mommy's brow furrow, but I continued avidly. It fits me! Isn't it beautiful? The curious question from Mommy's lips mutated at once into a thunderous, intimidating noise, as her glasses sparked a fierce glint in the dark of the hallway and her obscured figure became more visible, hunched over in a quite menacing way. What are you two doing? As she stepped in, the room warped and darkened with salty but bitter tears, and my joyful smile choked on the thick smoke frothing from the memory of her in that moment. You should invite Dad, I insisted, trying to be bold. Time had shifted yet again. I get why you don't want to, and it's Sarah's conscience, but the Bible says to honor your father, several times, really. Sarah's eyes burned with annoyance, trying to either melt or incinerate my head. Since dating Kenny, she was always like that with me. We used to trust each other with everything and talk constantly, but we'd grown apart over the past few years. I was 17. My sister had not spoken to our dad since he had disassociated and left the truth 2 years ago. I didn't speak to him that much either, but it shocked me that she had so easily shunned and entirely written him off, as if he didn't even exist. Somehow my mom had pulled her out of visitation with him, while my little brother and I still went to visit him until we each turned 18. Sarah hadn't dealt with the worst by any means. She hadn't been put into the terrible position that I had been forced into towards the end of Mom and Dad's marriage. No way she forgot about that ugly night. But no one would have ever expected her to act. No one. Good. You did what you should have. Brother Carpenter had reassured me over my decisions that night. His words would linger in my head for decades afterwards. Still, I was willing to try and have as much of a child and parent relationship as I could with my father, even if it was strained, and even if Jehovah wasn't part of it. I didn't expect much. Every relationship as a witness of Jehovah requires that each party be certifiably attached to the imaginary daddy of the sky and willing to participate in discussing his wants or asking for his advice at any requested time. And you must keep a straight face for all this as well. I knew I was still perfectly loony. Actually, I thought I was sane, but I'm sure you get the idea. However, my dad was no longer an aficionado to this brand of nuts. And seriously, after years in this particular psychiatric ward, it does become sort of tough to have any type of bilateral relationship at all. Shunning apostate family members was officially a conscience matter, but heavily encouraged. If you had any contact at all, it was to be minimal, under the table. The elders adamantly pushed no contact as the correct course of action, especially if you had any type of privilege in the congregation. Quickly, my mind shoots forward to my friend counter dropping to the beat of my tip-a-tap tips on Facebook. Another version of insanity. Shortly after, I think of Dalton Reed, James' father, and an elder in his congregation. I think of his son John, who had disassociated from the Jehovah's Witnesses with an incisive letter at 15. I remember John coming over to the house, and the two of them talking politics. James and him would talk video games, and John would tell me not to let his brother hog the controller. Maybe Dalton suffered from dissociative episodes or something. My dad wasn't ever the easiest person to get along with. Even outside of the insensitive sensibilities of the cult, he was kind of nutty and a little self-centered by anyone's standards. But he was still our father. If anyone should have a real grudge against him, it should be me. But here Sarah was, holding that line. And as I saw it, she was also alienating that entire side of the family with her decision. His family weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and they would never understand Sarah's choices. To me, that was a poor witness to Jehovah, right? I took this all so very seriously at the time. This is Sarah's day, Mom lashed back at my suggestion. She doesn't need the extra judgment. You should do this for her, but if you won't, we can ask Brother Alfonso or Cornell to do it. I didn't feel comfortable with it, but to me, that choice seemed even worse. I already said I would do it. I just know I wouldn't do that at my wedding. I don't think it's right. For a moment, the colors of the memory fade and slim into white stripes in asphalt. The wispy haze of the film flitters as the road stretches on through miles of Idaho-y fields of black nothingness. Fry goes on narrating as I wished I had been paying better attention. And we will be restoring normality just as soon as we are sure what is normal anyways. Who presents this woman to be married to this man? Brother Carpenter is back in my memories. He's doing the wedding talk and looking right at me. His pudgy face goes from that of a serious inquisitor, with the stern gaze and the typical hanging jowls of any other older Christian conservative patriarch, tightening into what I viewed then as a warm smile. Outsiders probably would have more correctly identified it as a creepy grin. He nodded expectantly. Immediately, the abnormality of my late teens clambers back into existence. The midnight's black converges as I stand, and the darkness threads into a tuxedo, the tie tight around my neck as I reluctantly raise a pointed index finger in response to Brother Carpenter. The groom had cheated on her once, but she took him back. I begged her not to because I knew she'd ultimately be immensely unhappy. I was so worried about her. Yet she hadn't listened, and now she was marrying Brother Kenneth Rivera. Now what could I do? Sure, he was a huge jerk to me and to a lot of people, but I just want Sarah to be happy. She loves him, or is convinced she does. It's her day, and her brown hair has been expertly curled and set. She looks absolutely gorgeous in her flowing white gown, holding her bouquet of roses, and she's smiling, a white, toothy smile. In the middle of the ensemble, under the makeup, was a pink, cheerful face that was all too familiar. Isn't it beautiful? Don't judge your sister. If anything, I think you should follow her example, I heard my mother's rebuke, flying in at me from months in the past. Then I sit back down into the cushioned seat of the rental, and the tuxedo unravels into the fabric of space-time. In the present, I'm wearing black leggings and a hoodie. Nothing so glamorous as the extravagant wedding gown or a flashy tuxedo. Sorry, Mom. Although I'm sure my underwear is fairly fancy. I think lacy pink thong, if I'm remembering correctly from this morning. No sorries for you, Jehovah. Fuck you. As my curse persists, fully saturating the annals of time, I thought again about Sarah and Kenny's wedding day. Driving to go see him now, I reminisced on how Dad and his family weren't invited to be part of the ceremony, or even Sarah's wedding reception. My father couldn't even be there, much less could he give his own daughter away. And for all my good intentions to rectify those things in the future, I'd only ever seemed to make things worse. Somehow my mom and sister and the congregation elders felt that my father's responsibility should fall to young ministerial servant me. I was only about to be 18, but ordained by Jehovah, so clearly I was ready to handle everything. I had walked her down the aisle and raised my idiotic pointer, denoting myself as the weird person with all the supposed rights to give another whole person away. Like most aspects within that culture of happily praying for doomsday, the experience felt momentous at the time. Holy, elevated, important. While underneath and afterward, thoughtless decisions and excuses are a rot that consumes and exposes the whole overwhelming sickness. I remembered watching them go back down the aisle, hand in hand, while I ran to pick up Sarah's long train from dragging on the Kingdom Hall carpet. I recalled my discussion with Kenny. It was just after Sarah had decided to take him back and continue their damaged relationship. Kenny was a player, and that was no secret to most of the brothers in the congregation. About a year prior, he had ended up cheating on Sarah with a Cuban sister from the Spanish Hall. She happened to be someone I had been kind of interested in, but her name was the same as my sister's. That made it sort of awkward. It was Sarah with no H at the end of her name, and what made it even more awkward was that a year prior I had been talking with another Hispanic girl named Sarah Ann. Like her and all the rest of us, the Cuban Sarah was a pioneer, and all of us had gone out preaching together many times. Many of us teenagers in the congregation would go out preaching as a group in field service because we had summer off, and a few of us even had driver's licenses and relatively dependable cars. We had fairly good intentions, despite all the mischief we admittedly got into. "Hi, I'm Mickey, and this is my friend Donald," I would try to say with a straight face, gesturing to my friend, Willie. Smiling, he held a mini tape recorder in his jacket. "We are visiting with our neighbors in the area to share some good news about the Magic Kingdom with you." When we got back to the car, we would have a good laugh at whatever we could come up with, giggling at the householders' confused reactions. We pulled numerous pranks on people who came to the door, but plenty more on each other. Gobs of time were spent making jokes and listening to music in the car, often to get out of the swelteringly hot Florida sun. Afterwards, we'd break at someone's house to play video games, or we'd go to a park to skate or play racquetball. My friends would at times go back to my house with me and write songs or practice for our band. Other times we would go shred the town on our skateboards. An older friend of mine named Johnny, who was the true founder of this tradition, had decided, it's not skate or die, man. It's skate or service. Very lame, but it stuck. However, as far as Jehovah's Witnesses go, we thought we were pretty cool. And we got away with a lot more than most. Technically, service was supposed to be of supreme importance, and the majority of any pioneer's time was expected to be spent preaching throughout neighborhoods, in front of businesses, or by letter or telephone. Most of us were pioneers, and a few of us were ministerial servants, and we felt we could reasonably intertwine our own little activities between all of that to make service more fun and grow our tiny group even more. As our group did grow, it had spawned several secret dating relationships, and Kenny was the smoothest rico suave of a brother in our group. He always had a flock of sisters around him, acting far too interested in what he had to say and laughing far too hard at his deflated little jokes. When Sarah entered the picture, the Cuban variant of the continuum, I felt like she did like me too, but it was clear she liked Kenny far more. If he hadn't been cheating on my sister, I would have been absolutely okay with that. But when Sarah, my sister in the continuum, decided to take him back, after trying to talk some sense into her, I had a few choice words for Kenny. I was going to lay things out. We've been friends a long time, and I view you like a brother, I explained as kindly as I could. But if you hurt Sarah again, against my nature, I held my eye contact as long as I could and continued. I'm coming for you. You could have just gone on and left her alone. I think you two getting back together is a mistake. But mostly, if you hurt her again, I'm going to be really upset. I'll be coming after you. After the catastrophe with my dad, I learned I had to be straight up. No one else would protect my family, and so I had to be as bold as I could. But I didn't realize how transparent that was. Sam is a sissy, Kenny laughed hard at my sister's concerns. Don't worry about all that. He was actually referring to my concerns over following the state's safety guidelines as 2005's Hurricane Katrina loomed closer and closer to us in Florida. Sissy, I'm telling you, don't worry. Sam's a little sissy. I'll be fine, and I'll be back before the strong winds are here. It's not like anyone was going to stop him. What really got to me then was how Sarah didn't bother to defend me in the slightest. Suddenly, I sank through a hidden pocket in time. Evidently, it was buried deep within the rental car's comfy seat. I was outdoors, shuffling along the sidewalk of a well-to-do suburban neighborhood, dressed up in white-collared button-up and tan dress pants. A tiny briefcase hung at my side, full of propaganda for the kingdom. I was a compact little salesperson for God, a secret weapon people had a hard time saying no to. I was sweating, glistening for Jehovah. A navy blue tie with Looney Tune characters was knotted around my neck, and the overall feeling was one of being incompetently strangled with a steaming hot, wet towel. Strangled by Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Marvin the Martian. I hate ties. I remember there were hot peppers on the tie as well for some reason. If I hadn't been a 7-year-old, that would have held a little foreshadowing as I put it on in the morning. I was in 2nd grade, and I was with one of the sisters in my congregation, preaching house to house. It was my turn to knock on the door. For a little 7-year-old blondie, in my first few years at the door, things had been pretty tame. Mommy and I had once gone to a house where they threatened us with ferocious, ginormous hounds if we wouldn't get off the property. Instances like that frightened me, but they were few, thankfully. There weren't many people eager to be malicious with a teeny, smiling child. Still, I was a spiritually battle-tested kid. I had my magazines in hand and a perfectly rehearsed presentation in the lump of my throat. I was ready to unload all the messages that had been harshly drilled into my petite and adorable noggin from infancy. However, nothing could prepare me for Daniel. "You run like a girl," Daniel snickered, my classmates at the table joining him. "Jumps rope like a girl, too," Kelly giggled. I had a little crush on Kelly, so that was painful. "Yep," Daniel agreed. "You're supposed to move your legs, but all you do is shuffle and wiggle around." Laughter continued for the rest of my classmates at lunch. "And you hop like a little bunny with the jump rope, sticking your butt out like a girl. You're a girl." The largest shrieks of hysterics came from the other girls in the class. "Well, at least I'm not stupid like you," was the best I could do on short notice before they separated us. The lunch lady put Daniel and I in timeout at opposite edges of the humongous white lunchroom. Besides, why was being a girl so hilarious? I wanted to disappear. Perhaps I'll move to Australia, or at least Detroit. The white wall in front of me morphed, shifted in my memory to a bright computer screen. The words Priceline, flights, hotels, cars, and packages stretched across a blue bar at the top of the monitor. Apparently, Samuel Robert Curnow wasn't quite dead yet. "Why won't you just quit breathing already?" Just below the blue bar was black text. Samuel Curnow booked a trip at Priceline.com. Here are the details of the trip. Just a few feet away, there was a light from the television. They Might Be Giants were singing "Science is Real" in a cartoonish music video. I turned and looked at my son, Jack, bobbing up and down on the edge of the bed behind me, enthralled by the glowing colors projected from the animation on the screen and the catchy music. Both August and I loved that these little learning-based music videos existed. We adored them. In the years since leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, we began to embrace secularism and science, and August had discovered, among other science-based children's videos on YouTube, these catchy, fun, and educational numbers by the band. John Flansburgh and John Linnell harmonized, rhyming explanations for the reliable honesty of science, while dissuading from misreading the fun of fairy tales as truth. Ember, my daughter, was sleeping soundly. She was surrounded by pillows at the center of the bed. We were in a cramped apartment, now residing in a tiny addition to the house that August's sister lived in. As she dozed, Ember wore a light blue knit dress that was affectionately made by August's mother. It came complete with a little blue bonnet, the fringes expertly crocheted to mimic lace. It was delicate and beautiful, like her, and she looked so precious as she slept. I smiled at the two of them and then turned back to the computer screen to double-check the details. The trip included a 1-week stay at the Hawthorne Suites Southfield, a ticket for Spirit Airlines Flight 372 to Detroit. The dispatch date was for the 10th of March, 2013. The Jehovah's Witnesses I had once held as friends definitely wouldn't have been able to handle this journey. From second grade, I had understood that most people in the world were confused about the destination. As the factory nation's cornerstone of manufacturing tradition, a bankrupted and dissatisfied Detroit stood at odds with its expected role in the global community. Nonetheless, there was its name right on the itinerary. The light from the screens faded, and the room became bright as the memory dissipated from my mind. I was in the second grade again, but the white wall of the cafeteria had also dissolved, and I was again greeted by the very bright, sunny outdoors. I was walking along with that older sister from my congregation, and my mom was still a house or two behind us. Together, the sister and I walked up to the next house. The yard was green with flowering bushes, perfectly pruned and running lengthwise along the wall of the house. The front porch was plastered with faux brick under the window and surrounding the frame of the door, with a porch swing hanging from the soffit of the roof. The scene was fairly typical, not much different from other homes we had knocked at, apart from a yellow Power Wheel toy car parked at the furthest corner of the porch. I wished we could have a Power Wheel. They looked like fun. Instead, it was my privilege to knock on the door and kindly try to convince whoever opened that their life was full of problems and required Jehovah's help. It was still my turn. Knock, knock, knock. A woman rapidly opened the door. I began my presentation, but I was quickly cut off. "Oh, hold on, honey. He'll be right here," the lady assured. I was absolutely bewildered, but it wasn't long before I had an answer to what was going on. Daniel, from my class at school, came to the door. He first did a double take, then severely glared at me in my fancy, wet getup. I was dumbfounded and speechless. This was something I had never experienced nor expected. "Oh," the sister next to me exclaimed, "I think you're about the same age as little Sam here. We have a little message we want to share with you." She nudged me slightly on the shoulder to signal that I should begin my presentation. It took 2 in total, but by the second push of her hand, the effect was no different than if she had tugged a pull string at my back. Without thinking, I mouthed out my entire presentation, handed my bully the Watchtower magazines he so clearly wanted nothing to do with, and did an about-face. I'm pretty sure he was still glaring at me as I demurely minced down the driveway in embarrassment. "You know, it hurt me," I growled at Sarah. "Why would you still love someone like that? How could you just let him say something like that about me and still want to marry him?" As I've seen it, romantic love is kind of a not real, let's play make-believe sort of thing. Like magic or wine connoisseurs. It's not real, but for a moment it is. It's like gravity. It requires at least 2 objects to exist, except you can't really measure it. Love is basically 2 entangled Schrodinger's cat people. And that describes Kenny and Sarah's relationship especially well. And I would like to say they deserved each other. But to this day, I have to believe that my big sister, my best friend, was just as much of a victim as I was to the gossip, feigned concern, and expectations of the fearmongers we were raised around. Sarah just threw up her hands in the air and walked away with a sigh, effectively ending that conversation. I hadn't understood how that was always okay. It was disorienting how quickly tables can simply be turned with the party expressing their honest feelings, instantaneously becoming the absolute villain. Remember absolute value in math? The absolute value of anything has a magnitude that is only relative to itself. You can't give it a positive or negative judgment call. This is what dogma does to people. Think about it. I mean, the math. Absolute value, remember? In our minds, we think of absolute value of any number as a positive number because that's easier for our brains to wrap around, for sure. It's just how we were first taught the concept. When you went to elementary school, Sweet Miss Sweet Lady only taught numbers on the number line to the right of 0, the positive ones. But really, absolute value isn't positive or negative. It's totally dimensionless. It can't be a vector. It's not going anywhere. It's completely devoid of any positive or negative judgment. If your 6th grade math teacher asked you to graph it on some Cartesian map she drew on the whiteboard, you couldn't. Any of the quadrants you chose to draw the line in would be an assumption, but when you look at the answer, you assume positivity. Well, believe it or not, ideas are the same. Capitalism, socialism, Christianity, Taoism. Even if some charismatic someone claims their holy of holy ideology is absolute, or even if it's taking over the world, absolutes have no positive or negative value in themselves. They just are. Every idea is only useful in the direction it is headed, and it's limited by that value. Results being positive or negative, those are the results of the world it lives in. The functions that cause it to even be an idea are just you. It might be some person, a random group of people, or maybe even it's the entire country, world, or universe. But once that idea has been traveled thoroughly, people start on new ideas. Or you can combine what works into new ideas. New little thought vectors, like you might combine the forces and solve in any statics class. However, that resultant force, that's all new. And since we absolutely make up a universe full of goals and opposing beliefs and forces, this equilibrium is vital. Being dogmatic about any idea or belief you stumble across is the most obvious flag of the irrational. Yet, being authentically you is absolutely the most rational you can be. An idea we may have held for years may suddenly make no sense because you've already traveled far past the distance of its value. No one should hold you to something that no longer works or that you can't fit into. We each reorganize ourselves and move forward. We each deeply rely on that, if we're honest. However, presumption and roles and accusations are rather common in Armageddon culture. It's relatively easy to trivialize someone's feelings when, to the best of your knowledge, God is going to murder everyone at any moment for being born and having sin. It's even easier when your default paradigm is that men will make decisions for you, and your decisions as a woman don't count. At that point, logic mostly becomes a useless tool, and all that ever really matters is your own feelings. I mean, in that situation, the men make all the decisions, so it really is always their fault. And your reward is being able to feel however you feel and express however you feel with not a lot of consequence. Don't act, though. Just feel. That's where you live. Maybe talk amongst yourselves, but they'll call it gossip. If it propagates far enough, that can be denounced too. If you're a sister who is a beloved pioneer or elder's wife, your distinct feelings and gossips carry the most weight. If something has gone wrong for you, then my goodness, call the elders and the circuit and district overseers. Call the legal department and the regional building committee. The problem must be fixed, and it will be as long as you are making your husband happy, if you have one. And there's the catch. You're at the mercy of your husband. You're fenced in by whatever any of the brothers dictate, so don't think this isn't totally a double-edged situation. The brothers' rules and expectations, however they decide to rationalize things to themselves, all comes first, no matter what. Sisters get to live moment to moment, while brothers don't. Women are assumed to be flighty creatures of instance, but men are expected to take on all the responsibilities for everything in any situation. However you slice it, these dogmatic roles are human intellect and versatility on hamster wheels, driving some monolithic tower of imagined corporatized justice, the most elaborate of breeding grounds for all kinds of pathology. For some sisters, that supply of attention can be sort of an addicting way of dealing with life. And if you were the rare breed, like my mom and Sarah, you could afford to take a hit off the drama stick pretty often. Having a college education, decent careers, and individual mobility, that's quite a hefty bag of coin to spend alongside all the emotional manipulation. Add dime bags of respect flowing in from less advantaged sisters, and pity flowing in from brothers, since these two poor single women had to work so hard amongst Satan's world, and in time, my sister and mother were the supreme gilded drug lords of the congregation. Unfortunately, they were also some of the heaviest users. So, when Sarah asked and my mom insisted, I gave her away to Kenny. As I think I've made thoroughly evident, I was totally ready for all that weight. It was absolutely warranted and appropriate for a 17-year-old. As we walked out, I held the fringes of Sarah's dress up so the queen's gown wouldn't get dirty. "Don't you ever put on your sister's clothes again," Mommy said, her round face cut and divided by wrinkles of anger. I was scrambling to take off the blue dress and the white pantyhose I was wearing. I had quickly thrown off the bonnet, and the rainbow beads knocked together like some chain gang of Technicolor convicts trying to escape my wrist from every direction as I ripped and tattered all beauty from my existence. "Jehovah hates this. Do you understand? He hates this. It hurts him, and it hurts me." Mommy was talking in a mixture of pitiable whines and brutal roars, and I quivered as she went on. "People who do things like that die at Armageddon." Tears streamed out and over her cheeks. My mother took off her glasses and wiped the tears away as she blubbered. "This hurts me. It hurts Jehovah. This is not good, Sammy. Sarah, you're not to do this again." Sarah looked at me with disappointment and betrayed disapproval. I had hurt Jehovah again. She loved me, but I was always getting into trouble. How could I hurt Mommy like this? I'd been so happy. I felt so beautiful. I wanted Mommy to be happy, but I knew she needed Jehovah to be happy. Why couldn't I wear the blue dress? It made Jehovah sad. It had made me so happy, though. I wish I could be happy. I wish I could be happy forever. "We need to get ready for the meeting now, or we will be late," Mommy said. Thank you for sitting through the reading with me. Like I said, this book should be coming out in November. That's going to be the last chapter that I read publicly here on YouTube, at least for a little while. I do plan on finishing an audiobook for it and doing a complete reading of it. But those videos will be private on Patreon or as members on YouTube for now. And then also the final audio for any audiobook will definitely be available. So look forward to that. And yeah, I know that was a really powerful scene. I know up until now, like, there hasn't been much transgender talk, I think, in the book, aside from in the introduction. So I think this is the first scene really where it's, we're starting to delve into that a little bit. And I hope that it made sense and spoke to people. And you could understand, I think every ex-cult member, or at least ex-Jehovah's Witness, is familiar with those things that they're not allowed to do because, it makes Jehovah sad. And for me, that was a memory that was definitely a cherished memory. Like, I remember dressing up with my sister, and it was very innocent. We had no idea that what we were doing was wrong, really, until Mom caught us, and she was very upset about it. And not only is the reaction just not the right reaction to have, it's that only, to me, if anything, that only drilled things further, cemented my identity further, and kept me from coping or dealing for a long time. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is That Other Laura Ingram. I am really glad to be back, and like I said, I will be making more videos and more podcasts, more content, and I'm looking forward to it as I continue getting back in shape. I'm, very fluffy. or fairly fluffy. Much less fluffy than I was prior, but still fairly fluffy. And so, hopefully over the next month or two, you'll see. I'm just gonna keep on doing my exercise and getting more and more in shape, and I'm looking forward to sharing that journey with you and the journey as I release my book. And again, look out for that in November, and I hope you have a nice life. I never know what to say here, so I just